beginner's guide for War Thunder, and this time we're looking at the Japanese. These guys are very, very unique, very interesting, and arguably some bizarre tanks, especially their experimental tanks, but more of that later. First, we're going to look at the starting reserve tanks, like always. That is basically the Kini and the Aigo Ko. I probably said that a little bit wrong, so I do apologize to my Japanese audience, but those are your tanks, the Kine and the Aigo. And the tanks here, they look funny, they perform funny, they are really fun to play, just because I'm going to cut it to you guys straight. Don't expect these tanks to be a Panzer III or a Panzer II, but expect them to be a lot of fun when you really do get the hang of them. So this has a 57mm and it utilizes HE and heat, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, it does have an APHE round. So sorry, it's an APHE and a heat round with not a whole lot of performance, and the Kini suffers from pretty much the same fate with having a 37mm, but it only has the APHE round. So that is the starting introduction to the Japanese tech tree. Moving on, we're going to first talk about 3 advantages of the Japanese ground tech tree, and then we'll move on to 3 disadvantages of the ground tech tree for the Japanese, and potentially 1 bonus fact at the end, so stick around if you want to see that. And without further ado, let us jump on in. So, general summary of the Japanese tech tree. The first advantage is its low profile. The Japanese have a very low profile series of tanks, except for the Rogo experimental, which sits over here. Other than that, the tanks are very low profile, which allows you to hide behind a significant amount of different types of cover. The second advantage of the Japanese tanks is that they're fairly mobile, all things considered, because these tanks are light. What they sacrifice in armor, they make up in speed. These tanks are very mobile, all things considered. The third advantage is that you have access to some decent ammunition types, mostly orienting around high explosive anti-tank or heat rounds, and you have decent performing APHE rounds. So those are really the 3 advantages of the Japanese tanks. However, these also have their relative trade-offs within the 3 disadvantages of the Japanese tanks, and that orientates mostly around the fact that these tanks are exceptionally vulnerable. Like I said, with the advantage of speed, they traded armor for speed. These tanks are very poorly armored. They won't sustain taking much damage, especially from guns that are quite dangerous, such as the British guns and the Russian and German guns. The American guns could arguably even do quite a bit of damage. I'd say even the French guns are a threat to the Japanese tanks, to give you an idea of how little armor these tanks have. So that is the first disadvantage. The second disadvantage is that the tanks hate heat round. As much as it is very good on paper, can sometimes give you some problems in game with ricocheting and just generally not performing as well as later heat rounds because of their early development. The third disadvantage comes from the fact that most of these tanks can be penned from the top. Like I said with the first point of lack of armor, this is especially felt in the top of the tank, and as a result most aircraft can actually penetrate the top of a Japanese tank with very little problem, and this is mostly with aircraft who have 20mm and even 50 cals can go through the top of the Japanese tank, and the open tops are kind of self-explanatory. So these tanks are very, very vulnerable, just generally speaking, but those are the 3 disadvantages of the Japanese tanks. But that being said, there is one very sneaky little trick that the Japanese tanks have, and that comes from the fact that they put naval guns predominantly onto their self-propelled guns, so you can overpressure a lot of your opponents quite easily. So the Horo, the Rogo, the Honi, a lot of these tanks, or the Chihalongan, not these two, sorry, are naval guns. So they are very effective at overpressuring vehicles. And that is it for the Japanese tech tree, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. And if you think somebody should see this video because they like the Japanese tech tree, please do share for them, or share with them, so that we can maybe find common ground there and that they can enjoy something. Who knows, you could bring a smile to somebody's face by sharing one of my videos. Who knows. But thank you, ladies and gentlemen, so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.